You spent decades saving and planning, but now comes the hard part. How do you actually spend your money in retirement without running out? Most retirees don't have a spending plan, so let's fix that. Today we're going to go over how to spend in retirement without running out of money. First, let's talk about why is it so hard to spend in retirement. So most of your career you spend saving. It's all about putting more and more away, making the right investments, and seeing it grow. Now when you go to retirement, you have permission to spend or the opportunity to spend it, and it can be really frustrating or hard to pull the trigger to make those withdrawals and see the balance go down, not having the contribution, so you don't see the growth as much. So spending retirement can be a really hard thing, especially for advocate savers. But the challenge you're going to have to face is if you spend too freely early on, you run the chance of running out of money. Or if you spend too little, you just missed out on life, and you could have actually had a much better or more enjoyable retirement had you spent more early and not lived out of fear. So retirement spending, a lot has to do with psychology, knowing that it's okay to spend some money, but knowing kind of where your budget is or where the cutoff is. And I've seen both ends of the spectrum. So you need to have some type of spending plan going into it so you know what you can comfortably spend and have indicators of when we need to cut back or make changes. So retirement is kind of like a road trip. If you don't plan out your fuel stops, you might end up stranded on the side of the road or never leaving the parking lot. So you need to have your plan in place going into it. Now, first step is just make a list of all your income streams or assets. And you want to put them into two categories. We want to have the guaranteed income and we want to have variable or discretionary income sources. So on the guaranteed income side, it's going to be your pension, Social Security, and the TAP annuity if you're going to go down that route. Those are your guaranteed income sources. So it doesn't matter what the markets do, you're going to get that income coming in on a guaranteed basis, plus they're going to increase a little bit for inflation purposes. Now on the other side of the coin, you have all of your savings accounts. So things like the Plan 3 fund, deferred comp, 403Bs, Roth IRAs, stocks, HSAs, VIBA, whatever money that isn't producing guaranteed income that's in these savings accounts, there are investments, that all goes on the other side. So when you got to make a list of it, you have your two sources. So now you have your two sources, add up everything on the guaranteed side. So if you've got $2,000 a month from the pension, we got another $2,000 from Social Security, whatever it is, you add it all up. Now that's your guaranteed income or your baseline income number. Now, if you need more than that number, that's when you dip into the second side of the discretionary income to kind of make up that gap. Now, if for any money that is in the discretionary side and we need to spend it, you want to be putting them into different categories to help fund your retirement distribution strategy. There's a few strategies you can use. Some people use buckets. I'm going to take 4% or 5% a year out. Some people use guardrails where they'll have a set distribution rate, and if their portfolio grows too fast, they'll start taking more, and if it starts going down too fast, they'll take out less. For simplest terms, what I usually have people do is create, 3 buckets. So it doesn't mean 3 different accounts. It just means inside of all of your non-guaranteed income accounts, right? So inside of the 403B and stuff, ideally you want to consolidate like-to-like accounts to make things simpler. You don't have to, but it just makes sense to have money in an IRA, a Roth IRA, a brokerage account. 3 accounts, keep it pretty simple. There's no need to really have money in the 403B, deferred comp, and Plan 3 after you've retired. You just combine them all, make your life a lot simpler. So you need to figure out kind of what you want to spend from that account per year. So if you're going to do something like a 4 or 5% spend down, you take your total balance and multiply by 4 or 5%. So for simpler terms, if I got $1 million and I want to pull 4%, that's about $40,000 per year I'm going to be pulling out from it. Now, usually you want to take about 2 years worth of that and have it in something safe, cash, CDs, short-term interest funds, something like that. So in that case, this would be $80,000 you'd be having set aside for the purpose of just, I want it there, I don't want it moving in the market. So that's 2 years. Bucket number 2, that's going to be where you put more of your medium risk funds. So bond funds, structured notes, buffer ETFs, something like that can go inside this sleeve. Now those ones, they have a little more risk tied to them, but they're supposed to produce higher returns than the money market or CDs that the other bucket has. I usually want to have about 3 years of cash on hand in here. 40,000 is our number. 40,000 times 3, we got 120. So we have about 120,000 portfolio allocated into these funds. So that gives us 5 years of spending power, 2 of it safe, 3 of it moderately safe, and the rest of it can be put into long-term funding. The long-term investing, yes, the aggressive stuff goes up and down, but that's how you produce your income and replenish your buckets. The biggest risk in retirement that a lot of people make is they're so worried about running out of money that they pull out of the market, right? The tool that got them to that point, they abandon it and they go all for safety. And they try to live on this safe, conservative area for 20, 30 years and think it's going to work out. And if you're spending more than it's growing, you're going to drain the account. That's how you run out of money most times. It's not because the market dumps unless you sell at the bottom. You just are spending like a normal person and the market or your portfolio isn't replenishing the income that you're spending. So you need to make sure you still have stocks and things that are actually growing in retirement and don't be overly conservative with it. So if you put it into those 3 buckets, you've got a decent portfolio to sustain that 4% withdrawal. Now you could add guardrails to this. So with the guardrail, you would either add 10% or subtract 10% from the portfolio. So if this were me and I had $1 million in here, I would add 10%. So 1.1, that would be my top guardrail, and I would take away 10%, and that'd be 900,000. Bottom guardrail. If as long as I'm between 1.1 million and 900,000, I know I can keep going with my 4% distribution, my 40,000 per year. I can maintain it. Now, if markets start tanking on me and I go below 900,000, that's a sign to pump the brakes. Maybe I need to stop taking distributions or even just decrease it. Instead of taking 40,000 per year, maybe I go down to 38,000 or 35,000 just until we go back above that threshold. So those guardrails give you indicators of warnings to start being a little bit more cautious. So not stop taking money out or panic. It is, hey, we need to take a little bit less to give it time to come back. Now the same is on the flip side. If the markets are doing great and our portfolio is pumping out 8, 9, 10% per year, 1.4, eventually it's going to go through and we'll go over 1.1 million. At that point, you don't have to spend more. You give yourself permission to, unless you want to leave a lot more money at the end of the road, to your beneficiaries and stuff. It allows you to increase what you've been putting away. Instead of putting 40,000, you could get 42,000 out or something like that. So that's how you incorporate guardrails into your retirement plan. Other income strategy is if you don't want to deal with any of that bucket stuff, I don't want to deal with guardrails or worry about markets, you can go the guaranteed route, which is whatever you feel like you're going to need to spend, you put it into some type of guaranteed income product. So most people use tap annuity. There are some advisors that recommend their own company's annuities or something like that. The annuity you get from the state's always going to be better because they can run a negative budget and has a 3% cost of adjustment. I've been around this loop multiple times since I started in the business 10 plus years ago. The private companies, they look good on paper because they can manipulate what their projected interest rates are. Most of them don't have guaranteed cost of adjustments. So on paper, they're going to look better than the tap annuity in the first couple of years. But over time, that 3% cost of living adjustment is going to surpass what that private annuity company is able to offer you. So long-term, tap annuity is usually a bit better. Now, going this route doesn't mean you have to lock it all up. I've seen some people that put way too much in the tap annuity and they don't have any room for flexibility or to do fun things because all their money is now locked into living paycheck to paycheck in retirement. But it's nice that they put enough in there to guarantee what you need. So some people are really worried about healthcare. It's going to cost you $2,000 a month. Okay, let's put just enough in there to guarantee that $2,000 per month. Plus, it has that 3% cost of living adjustment. So as healthcare increases, it's going to increase a little bit along the way to help offset those future increases for your healthcare costs. Even just putting enough into an annuity to cover healthcare can be a big load off people's shoulders, knowing that, hey, at least my healthcare is taken care of, or at least a big chunk of it is taken care of, through this route on a guaranteed basis, and it doesn't matter what the markets do. And when you have more guaranteed income, it allows you to take more risk in retirement. We no longer have to rely on the portfolio as much, therefore we can take on more risk. And when you take on more risk, over the long run, typically end up with more money or higher returns. All the people I've worked with and built retirement plans, those that use the tap annuity versus those that don't, will usually end up with more money at the end of the road, simply because they were able to take more risk. They stay in the market longer, so they got better returns. Now, there are a number of reasons why people may run out of money in retirement, but the key ones for those that actually put enough money away from it and aren't living outside their means are really 5 of them. So one is just overspending too early, thinking that you deserve it. So again, not having a spending plan. So they go on big vacations, they take all the family out, they take the grandkids, they help their kids along the way because they're still in college, they're getting married, so they're like helping them buy houses and things like this, buying new toys, right? New cars, boats, all this stuff that they feel like they want or deserve to enjoy their retirement, but they spend so much in those first few years that they're depleting their portfolio early on, and you can't sustain income down the road, especially if the market goes negative during those years. You're basically going to shoot yourself in the foot. While it might look cool to pull out $100,000, $200,000 when the market's rising, that's great. But if it's falling, that's going to be a negative impact. It's going to be much harder to recover from. You may end up regretting it down the road. You can still do those fun things and help the kids out. You make sure you stay within budget. I've actually saw someone pull $200,000 out of her Plan 3 account. She only left with $50,000 after that, just to help her son put a down payment on their house. Now, that $200,000 Plan 3, that's pre-tax. So she got a hefty tax bill and increased her Medicare premium. She's basically only surviving on Social Security and her pension, which between those two isn't a lot to begin with. But helping your kid out, especially when they're only in their 20s, just because you want to help them get a house so they have a slightly lowered mortgage payment, not the best financial move. Make sure you guys stay within reason and don't overspend. And that also appeals us to the next point, which is ignoring taxes. So there's like that person pulled all that money out. That's going to be a hefty tax bill, $200,000 on top of, the $60 $80,000 she's making from her other job, $280,000 as a single person, you're going to be popped up in a pretty high tax bracket. So that $200,000 withdrawal that she took on top of the $80,000 she made earlier that year from her other job, that's going to show up as $280,000 of income, which for someone flying single, that puts you 35% taxes. That's going to hurt quite a bit, especially if you don't have it withheld from the account. I don't know if she did or not, or how much she withheld from it. Most times the default is 20%. But if you hold 20% and have to hold 50% later off of a bill like that, that's a hefty tax bill. And I don't know how she plans on covering it. It just wasn't the smart move overall. So don't ignore your taxes. Anytime you pull money out of traditional accounts, you still have to pay taxes on it. You end up with a lot less. Another reason is just underestimating healthcare costs. A lot of people think, hey, I got to pay for the monthly healthcare bill. But some people forget that much. So yeah, when you do your budget, make sure you have what the actual healthcare cost is going to be inside of there, because your employer's not paying for it anymore. You are. Yes, there's Medicare, but then you need your supplement. Most employees use PEB if they're eligible, but that can still be upwards of, $800 per month once you're over 65 as a couple, as much as, $1,800 per month if you're retiring earlier than 65. So that's one thing that a lot of people kind of forget about when they're doing their spending plan, because they're just looking at their bank statements and what they're currently spending. They don't see the future expenses that are going to kick on down the road. Other part of that is just the long-term care costs. Remember that if you hire someone for just 6 hours a day and they charge you $35 an hour, that's still $6,500 per month. If you do that for a year and a half, easily looking at $114,000 or so just for assisted living or someone helping you bathe, clean the house, feed, all that kind of stuff. So long-term costs are real. Family can help to a degree, but it puts a lot of stress on them, especially if they have their own families to worry about, they're in their own careers, and they can't be there to take you to the bathroom at 3 in the morning. So long-term care is a real cost that people forget or underestimate all the time. Reason number 4 is they just don't react to the markets. They do in the set and forget it mindset. They don't adjust their spending habits. So they keep spending and spending. Even when markets are going down or sideways, they don't have guardrails set up. And they're just kind of hoping that, it's going to come back. It's going to come back. Maybe they reduce their income spending by a little bit, but it's not enough. And eventually there's a point of no return where if you spend too much down too early, you ain't coming back from it. You're going to be stuck with lower income for the rest of your life. So you need to have the spending plan and the guardrails down before you start taking your first dollar out of your accounts. And number 5, the word that we're getting tired of hearing all the time, inflation. Now, inflation at 1-2% a year doesn't seem so bad. Over 10, 20, 30 years, it really adds up. That's why your Social Security, pension, tap annuity all have costly adjustments built into them. When you're taking money from your portfolio, that's the reason why we say have money in the growth or the stocks. As that grows, you can replenish the retirement income that you spent and hopefully increase the portfolio to give you more income down the road. Because if you stay too conservative and you can only produce 5% a year and you're spending 4% of it down, portfolio's only growing by 1%. It's not going to keep up with 2-3% inflation. So make sure you have inflation figured out as you go through your retirement planning process. Now, the next part is really just the mindset shift going into retirement, shifting from the save mode to spend mode. So a lot of people, they struggle a lot with this part. And there are communities and coaches out there that's all they do is the mind shift stuff, kind of what's next. You've gone through your whole career with a purpose, you got this group of friends, and that all stops. And that can be a big shift for people. Not even wake up in the morning, make your lunch, going through routine, it can throw a lot of people off. So there's mindset shifts that have to happen along the way. From the money side of things, it's important to know that you don't have to feel guilty for enjoying your money. Just make sure you stay on budget. You want to create a fun budget each year. Things for like traveling, grandkids, hobbies. You definitely do those things within reason. Just don't get too carried away too early with them. The biggest regret that I've seen, some people admit it, some people will never admit it, but is that they're just so scared to spend early on that they don't feel they can enjoy it. Or they wait too long. They keep working to save for some arbitrary goal of number that they want. They retire and now they don't have the motivation, the time. They're not healthy enough to travel and do the things that they wanted to do earlier. They saved up for this number that they made up in their mind that they said that they needed, and turns out they really didn't need it. They could have retired a lot earlier, or they could have spent more early on in retirement, but they were just too conservative, and now they're in their mid-70s, early 80s, sitting on a lot of money, and they can't really spend it in a way that would be meaningful to them. So overall, knowing how to spend your money is a thing that you need to learn early on and kind of get a budget plan to go with, but also make sure you're not leaving too much or being too safe with it and missing out on life in general. So as far as like a checklist of all the things we covered today, first thing you want to do is make a list of your income, both guaranteed and variable. Create your bucket strategy planning. So have money set aside in cash, medium risk funds, and the high risk funds. The high risk funds are necessary to help replenish what you're spending. Figure out how you want to withdraw. You're going to go all the guaranteed route. Are you going to pull a percentage off? Are you using guardrails? Or are you not using guardrails? Do you know what guardrails are? Those are different ways you can pull money out. You want to figure out what your big expenses are, your big ticket items, travel, home repairs, and kind of plan for it. Don't do everything in the first year because you feel like you need to. Plan it over time. Revisit the plan each year and then make adjustments as needed. If that sounds too confusing, too much, you don't want to deal with it, that's what financial advisors are there for, to help you keep track of these things so they can help you with the whole retirement investment portion. And you can just focus on living and spending the money that you've earned on, and you have a backup set of eyes or another voice in your head to tell you, oh, that's a good idea. Yes, you should do it and not feel guilty about it. Or that's a bad idea. You really shouldn't do that. And just the psychology factor alone is probably what 80% of my job is. It's telling people yes, do it or don't do it. And they just need that extra voice to give them that push or the motivation to stop or make changes. So while running out of money is a big risk for people, state employees have a little easier because you have the pension and Social Security. So even if you did drain your account, you still have some guaranteed income, more than what most people have. But even then, you don't want to get to the point where you don't have any of the extra fun money around to spend or care for you when you need it most. So retirement isn't about stopping, it's about living. But in order to live freely, you need to have some type of spending plan. Use what you have wisely and protect yourself from running out. And if you need help with this kind of stuff, that's what we do here at Scenic all the time. We work with Washington State employees, helping them get their retirement plans figured out, their spending plans, investment plans, whatever they need to get them to and through their retirement. If you're not ready to dive in or jump on a call yet, join the free community. The link is in the description below. We've got over 100 active members with hundreds of years of experience that you can ask questions on. There are exclusive video libraries and courses in there that you can watch to help yourself get educated, so you can do a lot of this stuff on your own if you're not ready to hire the advisor yet. So link to that will be in the description below. And until next time, remember that your future depends on what you do today.